Have you ever had that feeling where you understand something so deeply, like so fundamentally, but absolutely no one around you gets it?
Oh, yeah. Constantly.
Right. I mean, you try to explain it, you try to map it out, you bring receipts, but you just get these blank, completely uncomprehending stares.
Or honestly, worse, you get laughed out of the room.
Exactly. It is an incredibly isolating experience. And that exact tension, that feeling of seeing a horizon that no one else possesses the hardware to see, is exactly what we're exploring in today's deep dive.
Yeah, it's a really heavy topic, but so universally relatable.
It really is. So we're looking at this really fascinating essay by an author named Xu Feng, and it was edited by Qin Yu. It carries this rather um, poetic but imposing title. It's called Morning Mushrooms Do Not Know the Cycle of Day and Night, and Cicadas Do Not Understand the Cycles of Spring and Autumn.
It is a really striking title. I mean, it does not pull any punches about what we are getting into today.
No, it definitely doesn't.
Okay. So our mission today for you, the listener, is to explore the absolute limits of human perspective based on the arguments laid out in this text. We're going to look at the actual mechanics of how extreme, crushing loneliness can, counterintuitively, serve as a launch pad for massive philosophical breakthroughs.
Which is wild to think about.
Right, it totally flips the script. And we will also examine why the everyday reliable worldview we all use to, just navigate our lives might actually be radically, tragically limited.
Yeah.
And finally, we'll track how human imagination has basically always been locked in this brutal battle against societal ridicule.
So to really grasp what the author is saying about the limits of our perspective, we kind of have to start by looking at someone who felt the absolute agony of seeing way beyond those limits.
Yeah, the prime example.
Right. So the essay centers heavily on the ancient Chinese philosopher Zhuangzi. The text paints this picture of a man dealing with a profound, almost suffocating level of isolation. And it's all because of his expansive worldview.
And the author draws a really sharp historical contrast here to illustrate the specific flavor of Zhuangzi's loneliness. Because, being lonely is one thing, but this was next level.
Right. It wasn't just like not having someone to get coffee with.
Exactly. So the text brings up another historical figure, Yu Boya. Yu Doya was a renowned musician, and he possessed what was called the sublime melody of mountains and waters.
Wow, that sounds intense.
It was. It was brilliant, incredibly complex music. But the crucial detail here is that Yu Boya had a friend named Zhang Ziki,
Okay.
and Zhang Ziki could actually understand that melody. He could hear it, parse it, appreciate it. So Yu Boya had a kindred spirit. He had an audience of at least one who truly resonated with his highest thoughts.
Yeah, and Zhuangzi did not even have that. Like, he was entirely devoid of a Zhangziki. No one on earth could understand his sublime melody, his understanding of the universe.
Not a single person.
Right. And the text does not sugarcoat the psychological toll this took. I mean, it describes him as a flesh and blood person existing in a state of intense suffering, profound anger, and just deep existential loneliness.
Yeah, the author notes he was so isolated he very nearly gave up on life entirely.
It's a portrait of a man at the absolute end of his psychological rope.
But this is where the essay introduces a core philosophical mechanism. It's this idea that extremes meet, and when things reach their limit, they reverse.
Which is a very profound concept.
It really is. The text argues that hitting the absolute bottom of human isolation is exactly what pushed Zhuangzi into a massive breakthrough. He achieved what the author calls a phoenix rising from the ashes moment.
Transforming into a celestial being, right?
Exactly, and achieving this great leap in his understanding of life.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I suspect a lot of people listening might be a little skeptical of that kind of leap.
Oh, for sure.
When we look at this from a purely psychological standpoint, is this kind of extreme isolation actually a reliable path to enlightenment? Or, and I just have to ask this, is it just a very elaborate coping mechanism for someone who fundamentally cannot fit into human society?
Right, like, is he just making it up to feel better?
Exactly. If you are entirely rejected by everyone on Earth, of course you're going to try and find a friend somewhere else, right?
What's fascinating here is that the author anticipates that exact brand of modern skepticism and just turns it entirely inside out.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The text doesn't view his isolation as a social failure at all. It frames it as a mandatory prerequisite for ultimate success. The author explicitly argues that sinking into this absolute misery and loneliness is actually the highest realm of life.
Wait, the misery itself is the highest realm.
Hell, the process is. It operates on the logic that the human ego has to be completely shattered by isolation before it can actually expand.
Wow.
So because human connection fell short and provided zero validation, Zhuangzi was forced to seek kindred spirits beyond humanity entirely.
So his solution, according to the text, was to communicate with the spirit of heaven and earth, which the author identifies as the cosmic spirit, or the Tao.
Right, he bypassed human peers altogether.
Exactly. He befriended the eternal and boundless, which is defined in the essay as the greatest creator. He essentially outsourced his need for a kindred spirit to the cosmos itself.
And that pivot from seeking validation from the people in your literal village to seeking a connection with the fabric of the universe, that is the crux of Zhuangzi's breakthrough in this essay.
It's a massive shift in perspective.
But understanding his solution naturally forces us to examine the root of the problem. Like, if he had to turn to the cosmos, why couldn't the people standing right next to him hear his melody?
What was blocking them?
Exactly. What was preventing them from understanding his perspective?
This brings us directly to the titular metaphor of the source material. This is where the morning mushrooms and the cicadas come into play.
The best part of the essay?
It's so good. It is vital to explain the mechanics of this metaphor for you, the listener, because it is the absolute engine that drives the entire essay.
Yeah, it sets up everything else.
So the text describes morning mushrooms. These are essentially fungi or bacteria that bloom in the morning dew and completely vanish by noon.
Very short lifespan.
Right. And because their entire biological lifespan consists of a few hours of daylight, they literally never know that night exists. They possess zero conceptual framework for darkness.
The author then pairs this with the cicada. And the specific type of cicada referenced here emerges in the summer heat and then dies before the season turns.
So it only knows summer.
Exactly. A cicada lives its entire complete life believing that the universe is made entirely of summer. It will never, and biologically cannot ever, understand that there is a spring or an autumn.
That's kind of sad when you think about it.
It is, but its physical limits dictate the absolute boundaries of its reality. The mushroom doesn't maliciously deny the existence of midnight, It simply lacks the hardware to perceive it.
And the author takes this biological reality and maps it directly onto human philosophy. The text introduces a very sharp critique of materialists, directly comparing them to these short-lived creatures.
Yeah, the text goes hard here.
It really does. So, by the text's logic, materialists, which it defines as people who rely strictly on what can be immediately measured, touched, and verified by physical senses, are operating exactly like the morning mushroom.
Right.
The essay argues they cannot comprehend that the spirit and soul can reach another world of life simply because they are artificially bound by their immediate sensory input.
And the author points the finger squarely at materialists who look at Zhuangzi's cosmic realm and just dismiss it. They call it mere idealism, or write it off as a fantastical state caused by psychological delusion.
Just totally invalidating his experience.
Yep. The text uses the mushroom and cicada metaphor to frame this dismissal not as a triumph of rational science, but as a tragic lack of perception.
It makes me think about playing a video game.
Oh, how so?
Well, imagine you are playing a game where your character is locked in a single, perfectly detailed room. And you walk around, you touch the walls, you look at the furniture, you think, okay, this room is the entire universe.
Right, because that's all you can see.
Exactly. You are completely unaware of the vast, massive map coded just outside the door. And if another character somehow glitched through the wall and came back to tell you about the massive forests and cities outside, you'd probably think they were crazy.
Because it violates the rules of your single room.
Exactly. You'd say, show me the forest in this room, or it doesn't exist.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, your video game analogy captures the exact friction the author is trying to highlight.
Yeah.
Because this isn't just an abstract philosophical squabble about ancient Chinese texts. The author is pointing out the profound arrogance inherent in assuming that our immediate human sensory experience is the ultimate hard limit of reality.
This is a tough pill to swallow.
It is.
Hey.
Just because we only perceive the morning does not mean the night isn't actively happening all around us.
It is a deeply humbling concept. But, philosophical metaphors about bugs and video game boundaries can still feel a bit detached from daily life.
Sure, they can be a bit abstract.
So, To prove that this mushroom mindset is a tangible, destructive force that affects how human beings actually interact with each other, the text grounds the argument in a highly specific, real-world anecdote.
Yeah, from relatively recent history, actually.
Right, so the essay shifts its focus from ancient philosophy to rural 1964. The author sets the scene in a very remote village, noting that the author was just a child listening in at the time.
And to establish the boundaries of this specific mushroom, so to speak, the text mentions that the absolute furthest anyone in that village had ever traveled was to Xinjiang.
Wow, so hyper-local.
Extremely local. They were entirely disconnected from the broader global community. They possess zero conceptual understanding of the time differences between the Eastern and Western hemispheres.
Okay, so picture the scene. It's after dinner. The adults in the village are gathered round in the dark. They're smoking and chatting. And an elder in the village, a man who had never once set foot outside his hometown, speaks up with a thought.
And this is just out of nowhere.
Totally out of nowhere. He says, "Do you know, when it gets dark here, in some villages, it's already morning. When it's noon here, it's midnight there."
Just incredible intuition.
Right. Sitting in the dark in this tiny village, he intuitively conceptualizes the entire mechanics of global time zones completely out of thin air.
But the reaction from the villagers is immediate and brutal. The text describes how they begin to ridicule, mock, and laugh at him.
They just tear him apart.
They do. They call his ideas total nonsense. They accuse him of imagining things, of suffering from irrational thoughts. They basically take a flash of pure genius and drown it in what the author calls a flood of ridicule.
And when the villagers press the elder, demanding to know how we could possibly prove this crazy idea, he didn't have a grand mathematical theory to back it up.
Of course not.
He just admitted, "I was just thinking about it." He confessed he had zero evidence. It was, in his own words, just blind speculation.
Which leads to one of the central conclusions in the entire text. The author states, "Genius, wisdom, and great imagination are often quickly drowned in a flood of ridicule."
It's so tragic.
Because the elder had intuitively grasped a fundamental mechanical truth about the rotation of the Earth, but because it fell entirely outside the localized, immediate sensory experience of the village.
Because it violated their morning mushroom reality.
Yes, exactly. Because it violated that, it was treated as a symptom of badness.
To drive the tragedy of this home, the text asks the reader to perform a 100-year rewind.
This is a great thought experiment.
So imagine going back a century and telling people that in the future they were going to lie in bed and watch events happening thousands of miles away as they happen in real time.
They'd think you were a witch.
Or that they're going to carry around a little device, roughly the size of the cigarette box, that allows them to chat with people on the literal other side of the horizon.
The reaction from a crowd 100 years ago would be identical to the villagers in 1964. They would view you as completely detached from reality.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. We look at that 1964 village story, and the dramatic irony is just so thick.
Oh, yeah.
We know the elder was 100% scientifically correct about time zones. We have the satellite data.
Yeah.
Yet he was treated as the village fool.
Right.
But I have to push back on the author's framing of the crowd here.
Okay, let's hear it.
If the elder freely admitted he had absolutely zero evidence, and that it was literally just blind speculation, weren't the villagers actually entirely justified in being skeptical?
That's the modern scientific reflex talking.
Well, yeah. Based on the extremely limited data they had in 1964, dismissing a wild, unproven claim isn't a tragedy. It's just a rational response to a lack of evidence.
It is a rational response based on their data set, sure. But the text argues that relying strictly on that kind of localized rationality is fundamentally arrogant.
Arrogant. How so?
Because the author's rhetorical strategy here is to expose that societal consensus, even consensus that feels completely rational based on available evidence, is a deeply, deeply flawed metric for ultimate truth.
Okay, I'm following.
If the whole village agrees that something is impossible because they cannot see it, it does not alter the actual rotation of the Earth.
Right.
It just means the whole village is collectively acting like a morning mushroom. The author is using this to highlight how the demand for immediate, empirical proof often serves as a bludgeon to kill imagination.
Oh, wow. That is a brilliant and subtle trap the author has set.
Yep, they lure you right in.
Because it is incredibly easy for us, sitting here right now with our cigarette box smartphones and our intricate knowledge of global time zones, to look back at those villagers in 1964 and feel tremendously smug.
We feel so enlightened.
We feel intellectually superior because we verified the elder's claim. But the text uses that exact feeling of modern superiority to set up its final and by far its most challenging argument.
It really pulls the rug out from under you.
It uses those historical examples of limited perspective to aggressively push the boundaries of what we are willing to believe today.
Right. The author starts the final escalation by asking a seemingly simple yet slightly unusual question.
What's the question?
Even today, with all our advanced communication, if someone claimed to live in a place that is lush, green, blooming, and filled with birdsong 365 days a year, would people believe it?
That's interesting. It kind of acts as a stepping stone.
Exactly. It pushes the boundary just slightly past the everyday experience of someone living in a climate with harsh winters.
But then the text drops the historical anecdotes completely and rockets straight into profoundly abstract territory.
Yeah, it goes way out there.
The author asks, what about 36-dimensional spaces? What about realms referred to as the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, or the Elysium world? Can anyone truly believe in those?
And the author delivers a really stark answer to that question.
Which is?
The text asserts that 98% of humans cannot believe in these realms, and nor will they ever.
98%.
It declares that the vast majority of humanity remains permanently trapped in the mindset of the morning mushrooms and the cicadas, utterly unable to conceptualize anything beyond the immediate dimensions they physically inhabit.
So what does this all mean? The text takes us from highly verifiable facts like global time zones and smartphones, things that literally define our modern reality, and forces them into the exact same logical framework as 36-dimensional spaces and Elysium worlds.
It's a huge pivot.
I mean, I can easily wrap my head around a smartphone, but 36 dimensions, that is a towering, almost incomprehensible leap in logic. How are we supposed to process that kind of jump?
To process the jump, you kind of have to look at the dimensional math the author is implying.
Okay.
Think about a two-dimensional drawing of a person on a flat piece of paper. That 2D drawing only knows length and width.
Right, it's flat.
If you were to push a three-dimensional apple through that piece of paper, the 2D drawing wouldn't see an apple. It would just see a series of inexplicable changing lines appearing in its world.
Because it fundamentally lacks the sensory hardware to perceive depth.
Exactly, and the author is applying that exact same mathematical logic to us. We are three-dimensional beings. If a 36-dimensional reality exists, we possess none of the biological or sensory hardware required to perceive it.
It is as invisible to us as the night is to the morning mushroom.
Yes.
And if someone comes along and says they can perceive it,
This raises an important question, which is really the climax of the entire text. When confronted with the idea of 36 dimensions or the 1,000-year world, what is our immediate visceral reaction?
oh, I see where this is going.
Right. Do we scoff? Do we demand empirical proof? Do we call it nonsense and blind speculation?
We probably do.
Because the author pairs time zones with 36 dimensions specifically to make us deeply uncomfortable. By making us sympathize with the mocked elder of 1964, the text forces us to look in the mirror.
Oh, man. I see the trap now. If we demand proof and mock the concept of a 36-dimensional space just because we can't see it, we instantly transform into the smoking villagers from 1964 laughing at time zones.
Yep.
We become the morning mushroom.
Precisely. The text is daring you to realize that your demand for empirical proof regarding these higher realms is the exact same mechanism the villagers use to mock the time zones.
It's the exact same hubris.
It is challenging you to step out of your comfortable, highly verifiable modern reality and consider that your entire vast universe might just be a single morning in a much, much larger cycle.
That is a staggering perspective shift to try and hold in your mind. We have covered an immense amount of ground today, tracing this single vital thread through Zefeng's essay.
We really have.
We started by looking at the intense suffering of Zhuangzi. He was so isolated because he heard a sublime cosmic melody that no one else possessed the capacity to hear, eventually finding his kindred spirit in the eternal and boundless.
And then we examine the tragedy of the morning mushrooms and the cicadas, those creatures who are entirely biologically unaware of the vast expanses of time and reality that exist just beyond their perception.
And we saw how that same tragedy plays out in human society, where profound imagination, like the village elder's realization of time zones, is so predictably drowned out by the ridicule of the crowd.
Which is just heartbreaking.
It is. And finally, we face the text's ultimate trap. The massive leap to 36 dimensions and unseen worlds. It's a deliberate provocation designed to test whether we are still trapped in the localized village of our own modern certainties.
And the author leaves the reader with one final direct question in the text, and it's the exact thought we want to leave you with today.
Would you like to be Zhuangzi's kindred spirit?
It's an invitation to willfully step outside the boundaries of the morning mushroom, to risk the ridicule of the village in order to see a wider horizon.
But as you mull over that invitation, consider this final provocative thought. Our modern scientific worldview makes us feel incredibly advanced.
We feel like we've got it all figured out.
We really do. We feel like we finally see the whole year. The spring, the summer, the autumn, and the winter. We have global communication. We understand the mechanics of the solar system. We feel complete.
Yeah.
But what if, 100 years from now, our current, highly advanced understanding of physics, of consciousness, and of the universe itself is viewed by future generations as just another morning mushroom?
That's a chilling thought.
How do we balance keeping our minds genuinely open to the profound, the multidimensional, and the unseen, while still keeping our feet planted firmly enough to navigate the reality right in front of us? Are we truly seeing the horizon, or are we just staring very confidently at the walls of our room, entirely convinced we know everything there is to know?